Welcome to the first of two videos showing you how to use the Core Knowledge Language Arts Listening and Learning Curriculum, which is part of their kindergarten through third grade language arts program. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the introduction section of the Anthology, which is the teacher's guide, and I'll walk you through the important information you'll need to teach the domain or unit to your student. In the second video, I'll show you how to use the step-by-step lesson plans you'll be using each day as you work with your student. We'll go through a full example lesson. Now, a couple of things to get started. First, the information in this video is specific to the first edition kindergarten through third grade curriculum, which is available to download for free from the Core Knowledge website. Amplify, which is a partner of Core Knowledge, does have a set of second edition materials available for purchase as well, so you can buy hard copies. But just be aware that the information in these videos, as well as the free materials I have on my website, all the support materials, they all line up with the free first edition materials you can download from Core Knowledge. If you purchase the second edition hard copy materials, things are not going to line up as well, and the information won't be as accurate for those second edition materials. All right, the structure of the curriculum we're going to look at in this video is specific to kindergarten through third grade. So starting in fourth grade, the structure of the language arts curriculum changes. And so you'll just want to check out my other set of videos covering Core Knowledge Language Arts for fourth through eighth grade. And you can find those on my website or on my YouTube channel. And finally, since my goal is to take the guesswork and cost out of giving your kids a high quality education at home, I've done lots of prep and organization work for you. So if you visit my website, homeschoolworkplans.com, you can download free organization guides, supply lists, daily schedules, and more for using the free Core Knowledge Language Arts curriculum, as well as the free MEP math curriculum, which is available from a website out of the UK. All right, so let's dive in, and for this demonstration, I'm going to be showing you the first domain or unit of the Grade 2 Language Arts Listening and Learning curriculum. However, all the Core Knowledge Language Arts anthologies for kindergarten through third grade are laid out in basically the same way. So the information in this video is still going to apply even if you are using a different domain or a different grade level. And again, fourth grade and up materials are structured differently. So check out that set of videos if that's the grade levels you're looking for. Now, before we begin, I want to be sure you understand how the Core Knowledge Language Arts curriculum is structured. Language arts as a school subject typically consists of a wide variety of topics, including reading and spelling skills, penmanship, grammar, language mechanics, composition, reading comprehension, literature, vocabulary, things like that. So for kindergarten through third grade, Core Knowledge splits these topics into two separate curriculum strands. The listening and learning curriculum that we're going to be looking at in this video covers mainly reading comprehension, literature, literary terms and concepts, and vocabulary. When you get into third grade, there's also some composition projects built in as well. Now, the separate skills curriculum covers reading and spelling instruction, penmanship, grammar, language mechanics, and composition. Okay, it's very important. You will need both of these curriculum strands for a full language arts curriculum. So this isn't a situation where you pick one. You do, in fact, need both. Otherwise, your student will be learning out on some significant set of important skills. Okay, so one quick exception to that rule, though. If you're an experienced homeschooling parent and you already have a high-quality phonics curriculum, so something like Logic of English, all about reading and spelling, an Ordinary Parent's Guide to Teaching Reading, something like that, and you already are also teaching grammar and penmanship, you might be here just looking for like a literature and vocabulary component. And in that case, you'll want to use this listening and learning strand I'm going to talk about in this video. And you can skip the skills strand because those topics will be covered by your other curriculum. Okay, but a quick note though, I would encourage you to add the Core Knowledge Language Arts skills strand starting in second or third grade whenever you've completed your other phonics, grammar, and penmanship curriculums. All right, so for this video, we're going to be focused on the listening and learning curriculum strand, but never fear. When you're ready to learn about the skills curriculum strand, I have a set of videos for that as well, and you can check those out either on my website or my YouTube channel. All right, let's go ahead and open up the Listening and Learning Anthology, which is also known as a teacher's guide. And as you see right up front, there are 6 main sections. There's an introduction, there are step-by-step lesson plans, a pausing point, a domain review, domain assessment, culminating activities, and an appendix. Okay, so let's launch into the introduction section. And first off, I want to let you know that you can skip the set of alignment charts at the very front of every domain anthology. These charts are there for classroom teachers who are required to align their lesson with specific state standards. And luckily, as homeschoolers, we generally don't have to be concerned with that. Now, right here at the beginning is an overview chart of how the domain or unit will flow. And it is possible to use this chart to kind of schedule things out and generally understand what your student will be working on each day. However, I am all about doing prep work and organization for you. So if you've downloaded the free daily schedule I have on my website, you'll already have a day-to-day detailed schedule laid out for you. You'll also see on this chart that there are different types of activities on different days. So let's talk briefly about the different types of activities scheduled, but don't worry too much about this information at the moment. I'm going to go into great detail about this when I show you the step-by-step lesson plans in the next video. All right, so on most days, you'll be giving your student a regular lesson, which consists of two parts, Part A and Part B. And once you get to third grade, sometimes there is a third part as well, but let's just worry about A and B for the moment. Now, I typically recommend you complete Part A towards the beginning of your school day and Part B later in your school day. The listening and learning domains also have pausing points built in, and these are days primarily meant for review. And don't worry, this Anthology, your teacher's guide, has all of that laid out, including a few activities for you to choose from. Now, at the end of each domain, you're also going to find scheduled days to review information they've learned, as well as for assessing what your student learned, and a day for culminating activities. So again, you'll have at least a few options to choose from with those culminating activities. So there are many things laid out very neatly in this curriculum, and then there are going to be a few times when you're going to have some choice based on what your student needs or enjoys. All right, so next up in the Anthology, you're going to find a list of the components you'll be using to teach your student. All of the resources are part of the set of domain files you'll have downloaded from the Core Knowledge website. Now, keep in mind that the Core Knowledge curriculum was designed to be used in a classroom, so as homeschoolers, we don't necessarily need to use all the components listed here. If you've downloaded my planning and organization documents from my website, those will provide you with further guidance on which components you'll be using and which can be skipped. But let's go ahead and walk through each of these components one by one. First up, there's the student flipbook. This is one of the files that will be in the folder of domain resources you'll have downloaded from the Core Knowledge website. For the first part of the regular lesson in each domain, you're going to be reading a story aloud from the teacher Anthology while your student looks at the corresponding pictures in the flipbook file. All right, next we have the image cards, which are separate PDF files in that folder of domain files you downloaded from the Core Knowledge website. Now, occasionally during a lesson, the Anthology will direct you to use one or more of these image cards to enforce or reinforce what is being learned. In the second half of this domain, for example, your student will be learning several tall tales famous within the United States. To supplement that learning, the image cards will introduce your student to different geographic areas of the U.S. where these tall tales purportedly took place. And this is one of those wonderful ways that the Core Knowledge curriculum is integrated across subjects, as becoming familiar with some basic U.S. geography in this first domain right at the start of the school year is helpful to students when they study the geography of the Americas over in the History and Geography unit later in the school year. Now, as you work through these lessons, you'll also see that you'll be using these multiple meanings posters. Okay, posters kind of a loose term here. These are more like pages. Now, these posters are in the back of the student flipbook, and they help students expand their vocabulary by learning that many words in English have multiple meanings. And here are some examples of the posters for the words track, tune, and purse. All right, finally, we have a supplemental guide, which you'll have downloaded in that folder of the other files for this domain. Now, this guide is a wonderful resource for situations where a student needs additional assistance with the material or differentiated instruction would be useful. Because this is a supplemental resource, I'm not going to specifically talk about it in this video or in the daily lesson plans, but it is there if you need it. All right, so moving back to the Anthology introduction, let's take a look at that second section, why fairy tales are important. Each domain's Anthology introduction will include a section such as this one that lays out why the information contained is important to the student's education. And I would recommend you review this information at the beginning of each domain so you can be well positioned to work through the lessons with your student. All right, on the next page, we see a section for what students have already learned in previous grades. Now, a quick side note here. All Core Knowledge curriculum is built on the idea that students will gain an increasing level of width and depth to their knowledge base as they progress through the grade levels. This section is listing out the specific concepts a student would have learned during the listening and learning domains in kindergarten and first grade that will be helpful for them in understanding this second grade domain. Now, if you've previously used the core knowledge curriculum for kindergarten and first grade, then this is just a quick list to take a look at so you can work in small amounts of review as needed as you work through the lessons. But what if you're new to core knowledge curriculum, or what if you're even new to homeschooling? Okay, don't panic. You'll just be using this list a little differently. I'd encourage you to go through this list and check off items you're pretty sure your child knows. For example, it's likely that somewhere along the way your student became familiar with the concept of kings and queens, and that concept will be useful in this domain that starts with a collection of fairy tales. If you come to something though and you aren't sure if they know it, simply make a note, and you'll just take a few moments to explain that information to them when it comes up in a lesson. So for example, your student may not have previously learned the formal literary terms of setting, character, and plot. But you will have multiple opportunities to review those terms throughout this first domain. It'll come up very naturally, I promise. All right, next up, there's a list of core vocabulary for the domain broken out by lesson. Within all the core knowledge curriculum, the goal is for students to have repeated exposure to vocabulary terms. So here in the listening and learning curriculum, you'll see new words introduced in context throughout the domain. And as you move into the language arts skills strand, history, geography curriculum, and the science curriculum, you'll also notice an emphasis on building a student's vocabulary through in-context introduction and repetition of key vocabulary words. As we work through an example of a listening and learning lesson in the next video, you'll see that the words listed in bold on this page are the focus of specific lesson activities to help students expand their vocabulary. All right, on the next few pages, you're going to find some general information about listening and learning domains for kindergarten through third grade. Now, it's important to read through these pages carefully, especially that first time you use a new anthology. But going forward, you'll typically be able to skip these sections when you start a new domain. So let's just go over the basic information that's listed here, because I think it looks a little overwhelming at first. All right, first off, there is a full page talking through the types of comprehension questions suggested in the step-by-step lesson plans. The different types of questions, such as inferential and evaluative, are categories that line up with state standards a classroom teacher may have to align to. Now, for our purposes as homeschoolers, this is interesting information, but it's not critical to delivering lessons to our students. On the next page, you'll see an overview of the student performance task assessments that are available in the pausing point lesson in each domain's anthology. These, again, are for the benefit of classroom teachers needing to align to specific standards. And while you are welcome to have your student work through these performance task assessments, they're not specifically scheduled in the daily lesson plans I offer for free to download from my website. Next, you'll see a section drawing your attention to some additional activities that are available in the pausing point for students who need more challenge and learning opportunities above and beyond the lesson material. And finally, there's a section giving more detail about the supplemental guide I was telling you about a few minutes ago. If your student is in need of additional assistance with the language arts concepts in these domains, the supplemental guide is really helpful. And finally, the last resource in this introduction section of the anthology is the recommended resources for the domain. And this is one of my favorite parts of the listening and learning domains. Each anthology includes a list of books, websites, and audio files you can use to supplement the lessons. Now, the books listed can typically be found at your local library, or you may be able to find some YouTube videos of the books being read aloud. Now, right up front, I want to be clear, though, that this is meant as a supplemental book list. The list for this domain alone is several pages long, so please don't feel like you should read all these books. You could, of course, but you shouldn't feel obligated to. You shouldn't spend your days trying to figure out when you're going to be able to read that next book. Now, there are a few ways, though, that you can use this list, and typically what I recommend is getting in a habit of requesting several books from this list from your local library at the beginning of each domain. You can then read the books with your students spontaneously as you have time in your school day, or you can leave the books lying around the house so your student can read them in their free time. Now, one more quick note here. There are occasionally times during a domain when a lesson will call for a library book from this list or even a specific book to supplement the lesson. If you download that free organization and planning document from my website, you'll find a domain-by-domain breakdown of when you'll need library books for the lessons so you can get those requested in advance. I don't want you to be surprised by needing a book. You should be able to get those requested from your library a week or two before you need them. Now, if you haven't previously requested books from your local library, if you're new to this whole concept, keep in mind that it often takes a week or two for those books to arrive. All right, so that concludes the introduction section. And before you move on to video number 2 to learn about the lesson plans, I want to quickly mention a few things. First, all of these core knowledge language arts listening and learning anthologies for kindergarten through 3rd grade are laid out in basically the same way. So I know this video probably seemed like a lot of information, but I want to assure you that once you get the feel for one anthology, you'll really be in a strong position to navigate any of these other listening and learning anthologies. Second, please make a habit of taking some time at the beginning of each domain to read through the overview section in the introduction about why the domain material is important, as well as the list of what your student should, in theory, have previously learned, as well as review the vocabulary list and request a few library books. Now, just those portions will put you in a better place to work through the information with confidence. Please be sure to download the organization and prep documents from my website. Those are free resources, and I've done the organization and scheduling work for you. The daily schedule will tell you what you need to work on each day, and the organization documents can serve as checklists to help you get ready to teach your student language arts overall, and also help you get ready for any new domain, including things like library books or supplies you might need. Okay, so now that you understand how the introduction section of the anthology is laid out, let's move on to video number 2, and I'm going to show you an example lesson plan. We're going to work through it in detail. I'll also go over with you how to use the pausing points, domain reviews, domain assessments, and culminating activities, and how all of that is set up. Okay, so that's it for this video. I'll see you shortly in video number 2.